The Love is Blind reunion was supposed to be a chance for the couples to reflect on the experiment, maybe clear up a few disagreements, and celebrate the relationships that survived. Instead, it turned into one of the most explosive moments of the entire season. Because in the middle of the reunion, Amber suddenly stood up, yelled across the stage, then stormed off. And the moment instantly went viral. At first, many viewers thought they knew exactly what was happening. The clip made it look like Amber was confronting Jordan over their failed marriage, and a lot of people immediately took her side. But when the full story started coming out, the situation looked a lot more complicated. Because during that same reunion, Jordan began revealing details about what actually happened after their wedding, including one incident that completely changed the tone of the conversation. That moment immediately raised questions. And as more clips started circulating online, fans began noticing things that weren't obvious at first glance. Suddenly the audience reaction started shifting. So what really happened between Amber and Jordan after they got married on Love is Blind? Why did their relationship collapse so quickly after the show? And what exactly triggered that reunion meltdown that had everyone talking? Because once the accusations started flying, the entire narrative around this relationship began to change. To understand why the reunion moment exploded the way it did, you have to go back to how Amber and Jordan's relationship started on Love is Blind. Like every couple on the show, their connection began in the pods, those isolated rooms where contestants talk without ever seeing each other. And in the early stages, things between them seemed to move quickly. They connected emotionally, conversations flowed easily, and before long they were talking about the possibility of a real future together. But there was one major complication from the beginning. Amber was a single mom. She had a young daughter named Emma, and that meant any relationship wasn't just about the two of them. It involved becoming part of a family. Jordan admitted early on that this was something he had to think seriously about. Not because he was completely against it, but because stepping into a parental role is a massive responsibility. That moment stood out to a lot of viewers. Some people felt Jordan was being honest and realistic. Others wondered if it meant he might not be ready for the commitment the show requires. Still, despite those concerns, the relationship kept moving forward. Eventually they met face-to-face for the first time. The classic Love is Blind reveal moment, and the chemistry seemed to hold up. Then came the biggest test of the entire experiment. The wedding. Going into that moment, many fans actually believed Jordan might say no. The concerns about becoming a step-parent had been discussed several times during the season. But when the moment arrived, Jordan surprised a lot of people. He chose to say yes. They got married. And at that point, it looked like the risk had paid off. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because while the wedding gave viewers a hopeful ending, what happened after the camera stopped rolling is where the real conflict began. And according to what both of them revealed later, the problem started showing up almost immediately. Once the wedding was over, Amber and Jordan were supposed to begin a real test of the experiment, making their relationship work in the real world. And this is where the first major crack started to appear. One of the biggest issues was something surprisingly practical: distance. Jordan lived in Columbus, while Amber lived about 45 minutes away. On paper, that might not sound like a huge obstacle. Plenty of couples deal with longer commutes every day. In fact, Amber even pointed that out during the reunion discussion. She argued that a 45-minute drive wasn't unreasonable at all, especially for a married couple trying to make things work. But Jordan saw the situation very differently. According to him, the problem wasn't just the distance, it was the effort. Jordan claimed that after they got married, he was the one making most of the trips to see her. He said he drove out multiple times, while Amber rarely came to visit him. And that imbalance became a major source of tension. That detail caught a lot of viewers' attention. Because from Amber's perspective, the real issue wasn't the driving. The real issue was that Jordan never fully moved in with her after the wedding. Instead, he kept his own condo and continued living there during the week. Then he would visit Amber mostly on weekends. To her, that arrangement didn't feel like a real marriage. Amber described the situation as feeling like Jordan wanted to keep his independence while still having a wife waiting for him when it was convenient. Jordan, however, pushed back on that interpretation. He suggested that the relationship had already become difficult very early on, and that living separately helped prevent things from escalating further. This is where the audience started noticing the disconnect. Because depending on which version you believed, the situation either looked like a husband refusing to commit, or a couple already struggling to stay together. And then Jordan brought up something that completely changed the conversation. An incident at a wedding that, according to him, revealed much deeper problems in the relationship. During the reunion conversation, things took a dramatic turn when Jordan brought up a story that many viewers had never heard before. And the moment he mentioned it, the tone of the entire discussion shifted. According to Jordan, about a month after their wedding, the two of them attended another wedding together, one where he had a very important role. He was the best man. So for him, the night mattered. It wasn't just another social event. It was a moment where he had responsibilities and expectations to meet. But Jordan claimed the night quickly went off the rails. He told the reunion audience that Amber arrived late to the event. Then, within a short amount of time, things started escalating. According to his version of events, Amber became extremely intoxicated very quickly. Jordan described a sequence of moments that he said were both uncomfortable and embarrassing. He said she missed the ceremony, became heavily drunk early in the reception, and eventually passed out at the table. That was the moment where the audience reaction started to change. Because up until this point, much of the room had seemed sympathetic toward Amber. But Jordan didn't stop there. He continued describing what he said happened afterward. He claimed that later in the night, Amber began yelling at him in the lobby while guests were still around. Since he had to stay at the reception as best man, Jordan said he made the decision to take her outside to a car so she could rest. He also said he took her keys because he was worried she might try to drive. Amber strongly pushed back on parts of this story during the reunion. She argued that Jordan had left her alone and continued partying with his friends instead of helping her. That exchange raised a lot of questions, because suddenly the argument wasn't just about distance or commitment anymore. Now the discussion had shifted to respect, responsibility, and what actually happened that night. At the beginning of the reunion discussion, the atmosphere in the room seemed pretty clear. Many people in the audience appeared to sympathize with Amber. After all, from her perspective, the situation sounded simple. They got married, and Jordan didn't fully commit to building a life together afterward. For some viewers, that explanation made sense. But once Jordan began sharing more details about their relationship behind the scenes, the reaction started to shift. And you could actually see it happening on stage. Because Jordan's argument wasn't just about one incident. He claimed there had been a pattern of behavior that made the relationship increasingly difficult for him. According to Jordan, arguments between them often escalated into yelling. He said that over time he started feeling uncomfortable expressing how he really felt because he believed those conversations would turn into more conflict. That moment caught a lot of people's attention. Instead of the story being about a husband refusing to commit, Jordan was now describing a relationship that he believed had become emotionally exhausting. He said that combination of arguments, disagreements about living arrangements, and the wedding incident made him question whether the relationship was actually healthy. And that explanation seemed to change the mood in the room. Some members of the audience who had previously been cheering for Amber began looking noticeably more uncertain. Even a few cast members sitting nearby appeared surprised by the details Jordan was sharing. This is where the narrative begins to shift. Because suddenly the reunion wasn't just about who was right or wrong in a breakup. It had become a public debate about what really happened during the marriage, and whether the version viewers saw on the show told the full story. And then the conversation took another turn when Amber tried to respond with evidence of her own. After Jordan shared his version of events, Amber didn't just deny the accusations. Instead, she attempted to push back with something many reality TV debates eventually turned to: receipts. Amber later released text messages that she believed would challenge Jordan's story about the wedding incident. According to her explanation, one of the messages showed that Jordan already knew she was running late that day. In the texts, she mentioned that her car was moving slowly and that she was on her way. From Amber's point of view, that detail mattered. Because if Jordan knew she was delayed ahead of time, it suggested the situation might not have been as dramatic as he described during the reunion. But when people started looking closely at the messages, the reaction online was mixed. Many viewers noticed that detail right away. Some fans argued that the texts didn't actually disprove what Jordan said. They showed that she warned him about being late, but they didn't necessarily explain everything that happened afterward. And then there was another message that raised even more questions. In a separate text conversation, Jordan mentioned that he had already had several beers earlier in the day. Amber pointed to that message as proof that Jordan had also been drinking. But again, the online reaction wasn't unanimous. Some viewers felt the text supported Amber's side of the story. Others felt they didn't really contradict Jordan's claims in a meaningful way. This is where the debate started spreading online. Because now the argument wasn't just happening on the reunion stage anymore. Fans of the show were dissecting the messages themselves and trying to decide whose version of events seemed more believable. And just as that debate was heating up, the moment everyone remembers finally happened. The reunion confrontation that ended with Amber storming off the stage. By the time the conversation reached its peak, the tension on the reunion stage was already high. Amber had explained how deeply the breakup affected her, especially because it didn't just involve her. It involved her daughter. And this is where the emotional intensity of the moment really increased. Amber described how difficult it was to explain the end of the relationship to her child. According to her, after the marriage ended, she had to comfort her daughter, while also trying to process her own emotions. At one point she described nights where both of them were crying. That moment immediately changed the tone of the conversation. Because suddenly the discussion wasn't just about a relationship failing. It was about how that failure impacted a family. Amber explained that her daughter even asked if they could create a memory box so Jordan might eventually come back. For many viewers watching, that was an emotional detail that added another layer to the story. But as the conversation continued, Amber's frustration visibly grew. She argued that when Jordan chose to marry her, he should have understood the responsibility that came with becoming part of her daughter's life. In other words, she believed the commitment extended beyond just the two of them. Jordan, however, maintained that the relationship had already become unhealthy. And then the moment happened. Amber stood up, raised her voice, and walked off the stage. That clip spread everywhere almost immediately. Because in a single moment, the entire argument between them became the defining scene of the reunion. Some viewers saw it as a mother standing up for herself. Others saw it as the exact kind of explosive reaction Jordan had been describing. And almost instantly, the internet began arguing about one question. Who was actually telling the truth? When reality TV moments like this happen, they tend to split the audience almost immediately. And the Love is Blind reunion meltdown was no different. Some viewers walked away believing Amber had every right to be upset. From that perspective, Jordan made a lifelong commitment and then struggled to follow through once the cameras were gone. Others saw the situation very differently. They believed Jordan's explanation about the relationship becoming toxic, especially after hearing his version of the events that happened behind the scenes. And the storm-off moment itself only made the debate louder. That reaction changed how many viewers saw the situation. Because depending on how you interpreted that moment, it either looked like someone expressing real pain or a reaction that reinforced Jordan's concerns. And that's why this reunion scene became one of the most talked about parts of the season. But now the question shifts to you. What do you think actually happened between Amber and Jordan after their wedding? Whose version of events sounded more believable? And when that reunion confrontation happened, whose side did you find yourself agreeing with? Because in the world of reality TV, the story rarely ends when the cameras stop rolling.